This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. After leaving my ex-girlfriend, she regretted it. The night before our wedding, Haley didn't come home. I found her at her childhood friend Tony's house. When I confronted her, she frowned and said, "Tony and I grew up together. What's wrong with staying over one night? If you keep acting this way, I'll call off the engagement." To appease her friend, Haley even forced me out the door. I didn't get angry. Instead, I clapped my hands in congratulations. "You've already spent the night together. Why don't the two of you just get married?" I shut off my phone, cut off contact with Haley, and left the city. On the day of the wedding, with guests waiting for me, people began to leave. Haley was furious. Her childhood friend Tony put on a suit and handed her a ring. But instead of an answer, he was met with a hard slap. "No one can replace him. Rocky, I was wrong. Please come back." But this time, I wouldn't be there to serve her. In the spacious wedding hall, people filled the seats. Guests streamed in. The place was packed. Today was supposed to be my wedding with Haley. Haley, the newly minted business star of the city, was young and beautiful, drawing many supporters to attend. At this moment, Haley was gripping her phone, repeatedly tapping the screen. "Rocky, you better get over here right now. With so many relatives, friends, and business partners present, are you intentionally causing trouble by not showing up? If you don't come back now, our engagement is off. We'll have nothing to do with each other." But after waiting for a long time, her phone remained silent. Meanwhile, I was enjoying a pot of tea I'd bought with the money from selling the engagement ring. My cousin looked at me with worry. "Brother, why put yourself through this? You and Haley have been together for so many years. You're about to get married. Don't you think it's a shame?" I smiled, handed him a cup of tea, and signaled for him to drink it. My cousin took the tea and drank it in one gulp. "Ugh, what kind of tea is this? It's so bitter. It's worse than the tea those vendors give out." I shook my head with a smile. "This tea is bitter, but it has a pleasant aftertaste, and its flavor lingers. The tea from others may be sweet initially, but it soon turns bitter and leaves no lingering warmth." I came from a small town, just a kid who focused on studies. After graduation, I worked in Haley's father's company. Out of appreciation for my character, Haley's father mentored me. Later, he was betrayed in a business war, bringing the company to the brink of bankruptcy. Before passing away, he entrusted his daughter Haley to me. "Rocky, I know you are loyal and trustworthy. I'm entrusting the company to you, and my daughter as well. I hope you two will stay together." So, in front of Haley's father, Haley and I pledged to each other that we'd be together for life. The company faced heavy debts, and creditors came by every day, even trying to make Haley pay for her father's debts after his death. To spare her from harassment, I took on the debts myself and worked tirelessly to revive the company. Haley had grown despondent, grieving her father's death and the harassment from creditors. I took her on travels across the country, finally helping her emerge from despair. She threw herself into my arms, hiding her face as she cried. "Rocky, thank you. I wouldn't have made it through without you." Dragging my exhausted body, but seeing her in my arms, I beamed. Determined to create a stable life with Haley, I began reforming the company, running more business, improving operations, and pushing myself forward. After our joint efforts, the company thrived, and I handed over the chairperson role to Haley, allowing her to become a rising business star. The company was her father's legacy, and Haley was my girlfriend. I devoted myself to building the business and protecting Haley. As I expanded the company, I tirelessly sought new clients and maintained relationships with existing ones. Haley stayed behind, overseeing internal affairs. With one managing the outside and the other handling the inside, our company rapidly grew. We became a famous power couple in the city. 3 years later, our company became one of the city's major taxpayers. That year, Haley's childhood friend Tony returned from abroad. Under Haley's guidance, Tony quickly joined my business department. Haley rented him an apartment nearby since it was more convenient. When his performance fell short, Haley didn't hesitate to hand him my new client files, even introducing him to some of my long-standing clients. When I expressed my anger, Haley brushed it off casually. "Rocky, why are you being so stingy? You're already the head of the business department. If you lose a client, just bring in a few more. Tony's performance is weak. What will others think of him? You should show more concern for your subordinates." But she didn't realize that these clients were ones I'd secured through grueling social engagements, even drinking to the point of stomach bleeds. And now, they were simply handed over to Tony, who was looking out for me. It didn't end there. Tony, inexperienced in handling clients, bungled several orders. Haley came to me again. "Rocky, why are your old clients so demanding? They're asking for this and that. Can you go handle it? You didn't hand Tony a bunch of lousy clients on purpose, did you?" I sighed deeply. My clients were high quality, demanding, yes, but quick to pay. Tony's mistakes were damaging them, leaving me scrambling to repair relationships. Tony's failures left him sullen, unwilling to learn from me. Seeing his mood, Haley ignored her own work and took him out to relax, going on excursions and watching sunrises together. I had long since forgotten how long it had been since Haley and I last watched the sunrise. It was once our favorite place to go. When the company was just getting started, life was hard. Whenever I was on the verge of giving up, Haley would go with me to the mountain top to watch the sunrise, welcoming the first light of dawn together. When sunlight touched us, with her leaning on my shoulder, I felt as if I could see our future. That gave me the strength to keep going. As the company grew, I traveled more, seeking opportunities for us. Each time I returned exhausted and asked Haley to join me on that mountain again to see the sunrise and look at our future, she'd coldly turn me down. What's there to see at sunrise? It's just high up and freezing. It turns out the sunrise hadn't changed. It's just that the one willing to watch it with her was no longer me. The death of Haley's father was a wound in both our hearts. To avenge him and outcompete the rival company, I was constantly gathering intel on them. Finally, a month ago, I heard they had a shipment held up due to incomplete paperwork. This was during our fiercest competition. Our company had goods, theirs didn't. We could dominate the market and grow stronger. Haley stayed at headquarters, and I was out gathering intel to deploy our goods accurately. But Haley received a call from Tony. "Haley, I have a headache. I worked all night on distribution and accidentally caught a cold." His voice was followed by a few obviously exaggerated coughs. At that moment, I hadn't rested for 3 days and nights, managing our distribution. But Haley didn't hesitate. She left the company without delay. "Tony caught a cold. I need to be with him. You stay and oversee things. Seize this chance to drive their products out of the market. And on your way back, bring some cold medicine for Tony. He's run out." With that, she hurried off in her car, not looking back. She had vowed to defeat our rivals and avenge her father. But no promise could compare to Tony's simple, "I'm sick." That night, after finishing all the arrangements at the company, my cousin drove me home. Exhausted, I stumbled through the door. I sent my cousin with the medicine to Tony's place. I opened the door and saw Haley gently feeding Tony soup. Tony, lying in our bed, looked robust and flushed, hardly the picture of illness. I was sure Haley could see he was faking, but she chose to ignore it, savoring this caregiving. When she noticed me, she didn't look up. "Did you bring the medicine for Tony?" I was stunned. I had just finished handling the company's affairs, working non-stop for days. Yet she didn't ask if I was tired or if I'd handled things, if I'd avenged her father. No question about Tony's presence in our home. Instead, her first words were to check if I'd brought medicine for Tony. Suppressing my anger, I gritted my teeth. "I haven't slept in days." Her hand continued with the soup, her tone flat. "So, you're back, aren't you?" She spoke as though this were a trivial matter. A chill ran through me. I trembled, staring at her in disbelief. All the frustration and exhaustion from my job hadn't felt this hopeless. But now, her indifference left me utterly disheartened. I didn't argue. I turned and staggered out the door. I could have rested at the office, but I'd come home to see her, to keep her from worrying. But what awaited me was her cozy scene with Tony. I felt despair overwhelm me. Pushing the door open, I wavered as though my strength had left me. At last, she stopped feeding Tony, looked up at me, and finally noticed my weariness. She had to have seen how hard I worked for us, but all she said was a harsh reproach. "Rocky, don't walk away. Where's the medicine I asked you to get for Tony?" I shook my head in exhaustion. Haley flared up, throwing the spoon at my feet. "You couldn't even do that, right? Why did you come back at all? Go buy the cold medicine right now. Or don't come back. Let's call off the wedding." I'd lost count of how many times she'd used our marriage as leverage. It's true, the favored can act with impunity. The Haley who once nestled in my arms, calling me Rocky, had vanished, replaced by this indifferent Rocky with a hint of disdain. I forced a smile and looked at her. "Fine, let him take my place then." Haley flared up. "Rocky, what nonsense are you spouting? Tony is just my childhood friend. What's wrong with me treating him well? You're so petty." I almost laughed. "You watched the sunrise together. You go to and from work together. He's sick, and you leave the company to feed him soup. And now you say he's just your friend?" I pointed at Haley, weakened. "Haley, I love you, but that doesn't mean I'm a fool. It doesn't mean you can do whatever you want." Haley was briefly speechless, then found a justification, speaking confidently. "Rocky, you're hardly around. What's wrong with Tony keeping me company? He talks with me, comforts me when I'm down, cheers me up when I'm tired. You know, you haven't been there for me in ages." To hear that, For her and our family, I'd been away securing business, seeking new clients. I kept her updated, constantly thinking of ways to make more time for her. Yet she spent freely and enjoyed the resources I brought in, while scolding me for not spending time with her. Every time I returned to be with her, if Tony needed anything, a cold, an injury, even just feeling down, Haley would leave without hesitation. Now, she boldly accused me of neglecting her. It was absurd. Watching the rising tension between the two of us, Tony struggled to sit up and tugged on Haley, his face full of guilt. "Haley, this is all my fault. I'm the one who made Mr. Rocky misunderstand you, and I'm the one causing issues in your relationship with him. Tomorrow, just let Mr. Rocky fire me." He put on a pitiful act for a grown man, but his eyes betrayed a mocking glint as he looked at me. Haley pointed at me with her slender fingers, wearing the ring I had given her. "He wouldn't dare. I'm the chairperson of the company now, and it's not his decision to make. If he causes trouble for you in the company, I won't marry him." How ridiculous. To her, our marriage was a trivial game, a matter that didn't hold any weight. It turns out that our relationship was fragile, and I became the outsider. I staggered toward the door, eventually collapsing at the entrance. Just before losing consciousness, I heard their voices again. "Haley, will Mr. Rocky be all right? I'm really worried about him." "Don't worry about him. He's just pretending. He didn't even get your medicine, yet you're so concerned about him. You're just too kind-hearted." They resumed their cozy conversation, not sparing a glance at me lying at the door. In the end, it was my cousin who, concerned after overhearing our argument, decided to check on me. He carried me downstairs and took me to the hospital. When I finally came to, Haley was sitting by my bed. Seeing me awake, she looked slightly remorseful. "I'm sorry, Rocky. I didn't know you had actually fainted." I lay there, saying nothing to Haley. Seeing me unresponsive, she hesitated for a moment before furiously asking, "Rocky, why didn't you just rest at the company since you hadn't slept for days? Why are you acting pathetic in front of me? Are you trying to get my attention by being dramatic?" I still said nothing, feeling only a grim amusement. No matter what I did for her, to her, it was all an act, all a ploy to catch her attention. Haley stood beside me for a few more minutes, visibly frustrated by my silence. Finally, unable to hold back any longer, she said, "Rocky, I just came from the company's finance department, and they said any transfers of the company's funds require your signature. Go ahead and transfer $1 million. Tony needs a car to commute to work. And you don't look that bad off if you're fine. Stop acting sick and get back to the company so we can keep making money." I could only laugh from sheer anger. So, she came here just for money. No wonder she appeared the moment I opened my eyes. Looking at the face I had loved for 5 years, the one for whom I worked tirelessly just to make money for her to spend, I realized my wholehearted love had earned nothing in return. Now, there wasn't even the smallest hint of compassion. Maybe, to her, I was only ever an ATM, and now I was even scolded for being sick and delaying her money. I turned my gaze to the window, afraid that if I looked at her for another second, I would feel nauseous. Just like that, you're asking for $1 million to buy Tony a car? And out of the company's working capital? No. Haley clearly didn't expect me to refuse and went into a rage. "Rocky, how could you be so stingy? I'm your fiancé and the chairperson. The money you make should be for me to spend however I want. Are you even a man?" I chuckled coldly, no longer feeling inclined to argue with her. She wanted to use my money to support another man? Haley ranted for a while in my hospital room. Realizing I wouldn't respond, she finally left in a huff. Our wedding day was fast approaching, set by her father long ago. But now, my relationship with Haley was a mess. The night before the wedding, Haley received a call from Tony. Without a word, she left our shared apartment and didn't return that night. I went looking for her, only to hear sounds from her apartment that were not meant for others to hear. No matter how I knocked, no one came to open the door. I asked my cousin to bring a few people along with a locksmith, ready to force the door open. Finally, the two of them reluctantly opened it. Haley came out arm in arm with Tony. Seeing me at the door, Haley seemed flustered and immediately let go of Tony's arm. "Rocky, don't overthink it." Tony was upset, and I was just comforting him. I could barely contain my anger, but forced a calm front. How upset could he be to need comforting all night? And all the way to bed? Haley's face turned pale, but she insisted, "It's not what you think, you misunderstood." I had heard enough from outside, yet she continued to lie. Then, Haley suddenly froze and, looking angry, said, "Rocky, how did you know I was here? Were you spying on me?" I gave her a faint smile, full of disdain. "I just wanted to know where my fiancé was the night before our wedding. If you call that spying, then fine. And since you've already shared a room, you might as well make use of tomorrow's ceremony. I wish you a long and happy marriage. Hearing this, Tony smirked while Haley exploded with anger. Rocky, stop slandering us. We didn't do anything. Even at this point, Haley kept insisting. Tony stepped forward, feigning innocence. Mr. Rocky, don't misunderstand Haley. I was feeling down, and Haley was just comforting me all night. We really didn't do anything. He stood protectively in front of Haley, turning to me with a mocking grin. I felt a wave of nausea looking at him. Had he forgotten I didn't come alone? I glanced at my cousin, who immediately understood. He signaled his men, saying, "Get him." He smiled at me in such a slimy way. It's sickening. Under my cousin's direction, a group of men quickly subdued Tony, aiming their blows at the soft spots. Haley panicked and tried to shield Tony, but how could she stop so many men? Tony was soon bruised, lying on the ground, groaning. The men stopped, fearing they might actually kill him. Haley rushed to Tony's side, frantically asking, "Tony, are you all right?" Tony's voice was weak. "Haley, don't blame Mr. Rocky." Haley looked at me, her eyes blazing with anger. "Rocky, how could you be so cruel? Tony has always defended you. We're just engaged, not married yet. What I do is none of your business. And by the way, Rocky, you're fired. If you still want to marry me, kneel down and apologize to Tony." I looked at Haley with disdain, then turned and walked away. Since I was fired, I left. I went back to our apartment, retrieved the shares and partnership agreement, and handed them over to my cousin. I told him to sell them. I knew there would be plenty of takers. The wedding venue had been waiting for a long time to start. Haley looked pale as she stared at her phone, muttering to herself, "Rocky, you're really not coming, and you're not answering me. If it wasn't for my dad, would you have made it this far?" Tony, with a bruised face, was comforting her. "Haley, don't be upset. I'll go look for him." Tony drove his new car straight to my wedding suite, only to find the place empty. A smile spread across his face as he savored his success. All his careful planning had finally paid off. He hurried back to his apartment, changed into a groom's suit, and rushed back to the scene. Haley grew increasingly anxious. When she saw Tony arriving, her face lit with expectation, but then it fell into disappointment and she turned pale. Only Tony had come back, and she didn't notice he had changed into a new outfit. At that moment, the once bustling hall fell silent. The guests were confused, wondering who the groom was. Asterisk ding. Asterisk. "Haley, I'm not marrying you. This is goodbye." Haley stared at the message in shock, her eyes wide. Her hand holding the phone trembled uncontrollably. "No, this can't be true. Rocky wouldn't abandon me. He wouldn't. He promised he'd always be by my side." Yes, from the moment her father handed her to me, I decided to protect her for life. I tolerated her bad temper, forgave her unreasonable outbursts. Even when creditors harassed her, I went door to door, telling them I'd take responsibility for her debts, ensuring they would be paid back with interest. I just hoped they would stop the threats and let her rest. When the company finally stabilized, I didn't hesitate to hand her the position of chairman. I gave her my full trust, but shouldn't trust and respect go both ways? In this relationship, she took advantage of my love and trust, using them recklessly. Again and again, she trampled on them until I had no way out. The band at the wedding played on, but no one was listening. The host tried desperately to raise the atmosphere, but few responded. Everyone was staring at the center of the venue, waiting for the answer. Some well-informed businessmen had already quietly left. Before long, a large portion of the partners had quietly left the venue. Haley looked at the message I sent and wanted to call me, only to find that I had blocked her. Tony tugged at Haley's wedding dress. "Haley, Rocky is gone. He's just a coward. He betrayed you. Don't be sad over such a man. He's not worth it. Don't worry. There's still me." Tony knelt and proposed, handing her the diamond ring he had prepared earlier. "Haley, marry me. I'll be good to you, and I'll never leave you." He tried to put the ring on her finger. That's when Haley noticed that Tony had somehow changed into a suit exactly like mine. It was the same wedding outfit she and I had picked together. Haley pushed Tony's hand away, grabbed the ring, and threw it to the ground. "You're lying. Rocky wouldn't leave me. He wouldn't. He will never leave me." She slapped Tony hard across the face. "It's you. It's because of you that Rocky left. You're the one who caused this." Tony's already bruised face now had a new slap mark. His smile froze, replaced by an uncontrollable shadow of despair. His dream of financial freedom shattered. After all this time, he thought he had finally succeeded, but instead, he received a slap. After a long pause, Tony's face regained a harmless smile. He covered his cheek, his voice filled with grievance. "Haley, I didn't lie to you. Rocky has indeed left. I just went to your wedding suite, but he wasn't there. I tried calling, but I couldn't get through. Haley's voice trembled as she responded, "No, I don't believe it. I have to find him." She got into her car and drove straight to our wedding suite. In our wedding suite, everything was neatly arranged, except for me. The coffee table still held the wedding ring I had chosen for Haley, but now only one was left. Haley's face was pale as she picked up the ring from the table, her hands shaking. She trembled as she asked the relatives and friends behind her, "Has anyone seen Rocky? I need to find him. No matter where he is, I have to find him." But the crowd remained silent. Haley collapsed to the floor, clutching the ring tightly to her chest, as though all her strength had been drained away. "Rocky, how could you leave me? Didn't you promise to love me forever? I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Rocky, please come back." The relatives quickly came to comfort her. "Haley, even though Rocky is gone, you still have us. You still have Tony. Don't be too sad. You still have the company to manage." Haley gradually stopped crying, letting her relatives help her leave. In a corner of the wedding suite, "I can't believe Rocky has just left like this. Good riddance. At least we won't have to live in fear every day. Yeah, since he reformed the company, we've had to endure so much scolding. We've been here longer, and we're still relatives with Haley, and he still scolded us like this. Now that the company is finally doing well, what's wrong with us enjoying the benefits? We didn't take that much kickback, and still, he scolded us like dogs." Exactly. I used to feel nervous when I saw him in the company, but now that he's gone, our good days are finally here. If Haley marries Tony, it'll be even better. A fool and an idiot will have an easier time. Who knows? Maybe we? Ha 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 ha. A grand wedding turned into a farce in the end. After the wedding, Haley locked herself in the bridal suite, lost in a daze. Tony, holding takeout, arrived at her door. "Haley, eat something. It's important to take care of your health." "No. Haley, get out." Tony didn't leave. He quietly waited outside. Ding-ling-ling. Haley looked at the caller ID. It was the company's financial director. "Chairwoman Haley, bad news. I just received information that Boss Rocky is selling our shares in the market." Haley instantly snapped out of it. Losing Rocky was one thing, but she couldn't lose the company, the cash cow. "What should we do? Should we buy back the shares?" The financial director hesitated and said, "Chairwoman Haley, how about we follow the plan that Boss Rocky left for us? We could mortgage your wedding house and buy some shares first. But where will I live?" Eventually, after the financial director's persuasion, Haley understood that mortgaging didn't mean selling. She could still live in the house as long as she paid the bank on time. She agreed to the mortgage. The company's staff calmly got to work. They trusted the plan Rocky had left behind. This plan was from when he reorganized the company. Though many had objections, feeling like it implied he didn't trust them, they still left the plan in place because of his insistence. Haley got up and rushed to the company. Tony anxiously followed her. "Haley, I'll help you." Without much thought, Haley grabbed Tony and headed to the company. The contingency plan was quickly activated. With the necessary methods in place, shares were still being bought in the market. Even with the best plan, someone still had to execute it. Without Rocky's control, the company's senior staff became sloppy. They didn't understand that in business, time equals money. The company was once again in jeopardy. Haley felt the situation getting worse day by day, realizing the irreparable gravity of it all. She was never cut out for business. Haley started searching for Rocky, begging for reconciliation. In the past, Tony would snap his fingers and she'd abandon the company, cutting off all contact. "I searched for her everywhere, begging her to come back home. Now, I was receiving that same treatment, but I couldn't see it, and I didn't want to. After selling my shares, I returned to my hometown to start an e-commerce business and live stream to help local farmers. I didn't expect my initial idea to take off so well. My business grew rapidly, especially as the government strongly supported small enterprises in the Rural Revitalization Initiative. My hometown, known for its fruit, benefited, and my business was recognized, even earning me a Youth Conscience Entrepreneur title with live TV coverage. Haley unknowingly found me. One day, while live streaming in the orchard introducing local specialties, everything was going smoothly. I interacted with my 100,000 viewers. But then, something unexpected happened. Haley suddenly appeared out of nowhere, rushing toward me. In front of the live audience, she suddenly knelt down with a thud. She cried hysterically, holding up a diamond ring. "Rocky, do you remember this ring? We knelt before my father, and you promised to marry me and take care of me. Just a few years later, are you backing out?" The viewers were shocked. They came came for a live stream about agricultural products, not to witness this drama. Haley continued to cry uncontrollably. My assistant tried to pull her away and shut down the stream, but the viewers were having none of it, bombarding the chat with comments, urging me to keep the stream live. As the assistant and Haley struggled, her hair disheveled, I tried to suppress my anger and said sternly, "Haley, let's talk privately. There are still so many viewers in my stream. Don't embarrass yourself here." Some viewers began to comment rapidly. "Boss Rocky, have you abandoned your wife now that your business is booming?" "Yeah, I never expected you to be this kind of person. Could you explain? Or are you too cowardly to go offline and deal with this?" I looked at the comments on the screen, signaling the camera operator to adjust the focus on us. Haley, seeing the comments, realized the tide was turning against her, but kept on crying. "Rocky, I can't live without you. I took a 5-hour train ride to find you. Please, marry me. I'll do anything you want." Viewers started to support her. "I feel so sorry for her. She's fighting for love. How come the good women always meet the wrong men? Rocky, marry her." I was confused by the comments, as viewers were already pairing us back together. I hadn't even responded yet. As Haley continued her sobbing, my anger finally erupted. "Haley, you want me to act like nothing happened? You abandoned the company when it needed you most to be with your childhood friend. The night before our wedding, you disappeared, and then you were in bed with your childhood friend. This is your idea of love? Marry you? Do you think I have some special kink? I'm not interested in something tainted. I stopped loving you a long time ago." The crowd in the stream, as well as the viewers, started criticizing her, calling her disgraceful. Haley fled the live stream in embarrassment. That night, Haley and Tony's secret was exposed. Many sympathized with me and made purchases in my store, trying to comfort me. I was at a loss and could only ask people not to impulsively order. I never imagined that my final goodbye to Haley would come in such a dramatic way. That day, I was in a meeting selecting products. My cousin walked in with several police officers. I quickly greeted them and invited them to sit down, but what they brought was news I never expected. Haley was dead, and so was Tony. It turned out that after our private matters were exposed, it became the last straw that broke Haley's family company. Her address was even dug up, and she had been hiding at home, too scared to go out. Haley's company went bankrupt, and the bank seized her house. Seeing that Haley was of no more use, Tony decided to take all her money and run. But Haley, truly helpless, had focused all her attention on Tony. She quickly noticed something was wrong. On the night Tony was planning to flee with the money, she followed him to the airport parking lot. She watched as another woman ran into Tony's arms. Tony comforted the woman while cursing, saying how much time he had wasted on Haley. In the end, he had only gotten a little money, not enough to live on. Haley's face went pale, and she rushed up to confront Tony. "Tony, how could you do this? I've sacrificed so much for you, and now you've taken my money and run." Tony chuckled. "You have no money left. Why should I stay poor with you? It didn't have to be like this. If you had agreed to marry me and help me buy the company, I would have always treated you as my treasure." Tony grew angrier as he spoke, pushing the woman off him. He grabbed Haley by the neck, his voice hysterical. "But you didn't. You not only refused my proposal, but you even slapped me in front of everyone." His teeth clenched. "Am I not even a man anymore? For Rocky, you humiliated me in front of so many people, even though I tried so hard to please you. If you could win Rocky back, there'd still be some use for you. But now, you can't even win Rocky back, so what use are you to me?" With that, Tony shoved Haley to the ground. Haley collapsed weakly, staring at her reflection in the car window. In her dazed state, it seemed like she saw Rocky again. She saw Rocky caring for her when she was sick, saw them sitting together on a mountaintop, embracing each other while waiting for the sunrise. She also saw the despair and determination in Rocky's eyes before he left. Haley finally broke down. "Rocky, I was wrong. I was really wrong." She got into the car and slammed her foot on the accelerator, heading straight for her childhood friend, who was leaving. Tony died on the spot, and Haley crashed heavily into the garage wall. She died of her injuries despite attempts to save her. The police came because Haley left a final message and a phone, asking me to take care of her affairs after she passed. I took the phone from the police, opened it, and found only one voice message. "Sorry." I paused for a moment, sighed, and muttered, "It's no use." The Tony who had loved Haley so deeply was already dead, killed every night by Haley's betrayal. I buried Haley next to her father, hoping he could teach his daughter better. Now, my own bright future was finally about to begin. The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.